Thank you, Peter. Okay, so before these amazing storytellers come up, I'll tell you a little bit about the show. First of all, thank you guys so much for coming out in the rain. Holy crap. Like, getting here was insane a few hours ago. I'm so happy. And the people in the audience. Oh, I've seen people I haven't seen in a while. I used to live in Philly for a couple of years. And this is my first time back in a while. And I've seen some familiar faces, including some I served at a restaurant with, where a chef threw a baby quail at my head. We won't say who that is because of legal reasons, but bless his heart. Good times in the restaurant industry. So before these storytellers come up, I get to embarrass myself in front of you first. Actually with a little story about serving tables. First of all, now I run a podcast that's about food and the stories behind it, which is the reason you're here tonight, I hope. Don't have to be. But I have a sculpture degree from one of the best art schools in the country. So naturally, I now have 7 years experience waiting tables. Which I actually love doing. I love serving tables. Like, I love giving people a genuinely good dining experience. It fills me with joy. And you can actually make a ton of money as a server, which not a lot of people know, but you really can. And it can be fantastic in so many ways. It's really addictive. But there's one catch. When shit hits the fan, and it always does, you have to say, I'm sorry, I apologize, how can I help you? Which is really hard when what you really want to do is slowly stab someone with a butter knife. But it's something that you have to do on a regular basis. And the stuff you have to deal with as a server is absolutely insane. How many of you have worked in the restaurant industry as a server? Okay, enough. I'm sure you have some serious war stories. The stuff you have to deal with is so insane. I remember one time I had a guy try to pay for his $97 meal completely in change during a busy service. Like, you know that was premeditated. I had one lady, after her 5-course meal, refuse to pay because it was definitely 2 degrees too hot in the restaurant. I had one table try to set me up in an actual arranged marriage with their daughter, who was there. So the stuff you have to deal with is absolutely insane, but you have to grin, you have to bear it, and you have to say, I'm sorry, how may I help you? And I went to art school, so I have a problem with authority. So this graded on me a little bit every day. In college, I got this amazing serving job. It was at a high-end Italian restaurant. Never should have been working there. It was amazing food, it was amazing staff, it was amazing wine. And we were walking out with like $250 in our pocket every day. And they even had this rule where if your table didn't finish their bottle of wine, you could cork it as a server and bring it home. Great rule. So this place was amazing. Best case scenario for 19-year-old Otis. But you still have to deal with all the bullshit. So every day it graded on me a little bit. Right up until the point, one night, I was deep in the weeds. How many of you know what that means? Okay.
You're into weeds?
I'm not? That's cool if you are. Show of hands. No, if you're deep in the weeds, that means it's FUBAR. You are in front of the fan and shit has hit. Like, you cannot please every one of your tables. It's basically a triage situation. You have to decide like who you need to piss off less. And one night I was deep in the weeds at this restaurant. Saturday night, it was absolute chaos. The universe had collapsed in on itself. It was like that scene in Saving Private Ryan with the guy who's like walking around looking for his arm. Like, and I was the arm. And it was total chaos. And in the corner of my eye, I see this woman walk in the door. And I hate to say that's not true, but you get really good at profiling when you're a server. This woman could barely make it in the door. She was so hammered. And I knew she was going to steer this ship directly into the iceberg. And she was with these 2 really stylish gay gentlemen, totally sober, obviously. And I'm like, okay, this is gonna happen. So they get put in my section, obviously. And I run over, I'm like, okay, I gotta deal with this. I say, hi, how are you folks? My name's Otis. I'll be your server tonight. She says, listen, Oscar, we want bread, then we want olives, and you come right back to take our order. I'm like, okay, I can do that. And so I'm like running around, I'm doing all this stuff, and I'm running by her, and she grabs my arm as I'm walking by. Don't do that to a server. And I said, I'm sorry, miss. I'll be right with you to take your order. Run around because like table 7, the kid spilled his chocolate milk on dad's steak. He's pissed off. And table 7, he's a Splenda, hates Splenda. And this woman is screaming across the entire dining room, which is about this big. And everyone's looking at me. And everyone is so mad. I know I'm going to make no money tonight. So I run over. I'm like, I'm sorry, miss. How can I help you? She's like, listen, Oscar. Okay, listen. I want this Pinot Grigio because it's from my favorite region. But I better not say any peaches in it. Okay, ma'am. This particular Pinot Grigio does have notes of peaches in it, like it says right in the menu. Oscar, I want this Pinot Grigio, but I better not say any peaches in it, or I will call the manager. And like, I want to kill her, but I don't have time, so I'm like, fuck it, she's getting the Pinot. So I go and I put the Pinot in, and it like comes to the table, and I run her around, she grabs my arm again, and she thrusts the wine glass up into my face, spills the Pinot Grigio all over my uniform, says, Oscar, you smell this. What do you smell, Oscar? Peaches. Peaches, Oscar. Peaches, that's right. I need to see your manager right away. And I'm about to snap, and these guys are loving it. They think this is so funny. And my entire night has exploded. There's nothing left I can do to save this thing. And I know, I'm looking at Peaches Lady, I know I should say sorry. I know I should walk away. But I had it. And in a moment of glory, I said, I'm going to sell this woman the most expensive bottle of wine in the goddamn menu. Because I knew that these two guys weren't drinking. And if she had another sip, she was going to need to get her stomach pumped. And I was not very good at selling wine at this point. But for Peaches Lady, it was on. And I said, Miss, I know you don't like this Pinot Grigio, but I have something that I think you'll really enjoy. And I think I blacked out. It was like the best thing I'd ever done. It was like a dance, like a ballet. I said, Miss, it has backbones of plum and cocoa and it's rich, blah, blah, blah. And since you know your regions, the soil in the Rio Negro Valley is fantastic. And like the two dudes did not see this coming. And she is absolutely entranced. And we're going on, it's just amazing. And I said, Miss, this Malbec is simply an experience. And you seem like the kind of person who knows that life is too short for these experiences to pass you by. All right, Oscar, bring one bottle of the Malbec to the table, please. So, I put in the Malbec, it comes to the table, we open it up, she has a sip, she passes out on the table. Her guys, like, sling her over their shoulder and, like, drag her out of the restaurant. And I left work about 2:30 a.m. that night, exhausted, on double, and I made absolutely no money.
You took the bottle up.
But I did get to walk the beautiful streets of Providence, Rhode Island, sipping the Bodega Nania Malbec, straight from the bottle. Sorry, not sorry. All right, thank you guys so much for enduring my So, that was your first course. That was your like hors d'oeuvres. So right now we are going to be handing out our first course. Welcome, welcome. Did any of you guys fill out those slips on your tables with the times you had to overcome adversity? Who's got a slip? Maybe I should have mentioned that before. So there's these slips on your tables, and you don't have to put your name on it, but It says, give us a time when you had to overcome adversity, and I would love to hear your story. You do not put your name on it. You can talk shit about someone if you need to, whatever you like. All right, folks, so this is the first course. These are green cabbage rolls, which have a fantastic story behind it. From our first storyteller, Taft Pettiford, who is the executive chef at Founding Fathers. Please give it up for Taft. Very loud.
First time. How you doing? I think I'm going to jump right into this. Alright. It was just a few weeks after Christmas. It was like 2002. I've been playing video games with my father almost every day since. But this one particular time he was in the kitchen. I hadn't seen him in the kitchen as much. So I really wanted to know what he was cooking. We lived in the Bronx, New York at the time, a small apartment on the 7th floor with no elevator. Carrying groceries and laundry was crazy. The kitchen was only like 4x8, super small, arm's length. But every time he got away from the kitchen, I ran over to see what he was making. I looked in the pots and I seen him cooking rices and I seen him cooking vegetables. Nothing really weird. But then I seen him boiling cabbage. Boiling leaves. Why? So I just asked him and I was like, well, what are you making? And he was like, well, why don't you sit down and help me make them? So he told me there were cabbage rolls. And my sister helped. She was also very interested in what he was making. She started rolling them, I was rolling them. She was good, I was bad, as you see. You know, while we were rolling them, he told me about how he used to make them with his mother growing up. And he would hope that we would like them. We did, they were really, really good. He had been making them for years, but I wouldn't know that. You see, my very first actual memory was the day I got taken away to go to foster care. I was about 2 years old, and I remember being in a really, really big hallway. And my mother just really upset, crying, saying goodbye, and me just feeling like I didn't want to go. I could still feel like how tight she hugged me that day. So my parents, they grew up in Brooklyn in the 80s during the crack epidemic. My dad was a dealer, my mother a user. So, you know, my mother is 10 years older than my father, was already married with kids, and somehow fell in love with my dad. I don't know how. But, you know, they had fun together, maybe too much fun. In 92, me and my brothers and sisters got taken away, and I wouldn't see my parents for years to come. Excuse me. I wouldn't see them for years to come. From there, it was a battle for them from life and crime and drugs in Brooklyn, fighting to get us back. I would eventually end up going to many different homes, about 6 different homes, and going to about 8 different schools. It was pretty unstable for me. But one of the most stable times during these times were how good food and good time brought people together. I really related to that. So I was always in the kitchen. Mothers and aunts and grandmothers, they dominated the kitchen. And they were also the ones giving out love and attention, and I wanted that. So I would always hang around the kitchen. I'd always be in there. I would see them cooking multiple different types of food, from long tables lined with newspapers full of seafood and just warm baked goods warming up the house. So I found myself in the kitchen a lot. This is how I ended up as a dishwasher in a restaurant in Philadelphia, Pim Restaurant. I would eventually master the art of cooking, I think, and become the sous chef there in a few short years. After about 10 years of cooking, I learned Asian cuisine, French cuisine. I've cooked Mediterranean food and even learned how to bake. I felt like I was really good at cooking. So I was like, you know what? I should invite my parents to this restaurant. I'm the sous chef here. Let's get them in here. I talked to the chef, and I told them my parents were coming in, I would like to make them cabbage rolls. I remember my dad making them. So I made cabbage rolls, my own fancy spin on it, and I had them come in. They came in and I sent them a bunch of other things. I sent them a beet salad, maybe some quail, some Brussels, all different types of things, and they were really happy with it. But when it came time to send them out the cabbage rolls, I got nervous. It's like, they're gonna love them. I sent them out, and to my surprise, when I came out, like half of them was eaten, maybe not even that. My father was not a fan. He did not feel like I've done him justice, and he didn't like them, but I'm like, well, I'm a cook. You know, I get over it. Many people won't like things I cook. But I don't think I'll be able to make them as good for him, ever. He's always going to be a critic about it. And I hope I made them good enough for you guys. Thank you very much.
Give it up for Taft, everybody. So wasn't that right? Wasn't that right? 100 pound rolls. Fantastic. I don't know if I mentioned this exclusively in the beginning, but each of the storytellers that you're hearing tonight prepared the food that you're going to eat. So this is handmade by all the chefs that you're going to hear from tonight. So this is the first of 5 courses. So enjoy your food for a second. I'm going to go around and I'm going to collect your slips. So if you have a little story, please let me know. We'll get your second course out to you soon.
like, I thought they were so nice and so, I don't know French, but I really tried, but they just come so very nice.
But we don't like that.
You can keep eating, but I just got a couple of these and they're really funny. I'm just going to read these to you. Okay, so I just want to ask you all like kind of a time that you had to overcome adversity, because this Lone First Person Arts Festival, the theme is overcoming, which is why all the people that you're seeing tonight tell stories that have stories of triumphing over adversity. So the prompts on your table say, tell us about the time you had to overcome adversity. When I didn't get into a single college I applied to. Wait, how did you overcome adversity by doing that? That's crazy. I think it would be getting into all the colleges that you applied to. Okay, well, I'm very sorry. I hope they weren't that great of colleges. Tell us about a time that you had to overcome adversity. I have not screened these, so I don't know what's going to happen. In high school, during the late 70s and early 80s, my best friends were Afro-American and Iranian. Being white, they called us the Odd Squad. We did everything together. We paid no attention to people who tried to pick fights, teasing, and name-calling. We were very proud of our friendship, and we were proud of who we were. And we respect our diversity. That's genuine. That's amazing. Congrats to you. Good work. Okay, tell us about a time you had to overcome adversity. I'm probably reading this wrong, but it says, I'm reading being one of the few fetuses in the kitchen. I don't think it's fetuses. But I don't know what that says. You'd think that's what it says, but I'm not exactly sure. Penmanship is a virtue, people, because then you get called fetuses, and that's on you. Well, congrats. If you're a fetus in the kitchen, you must be excelling in whatever work you're doing now. Tell us about a time you had to overcome adversity. I was racially profiled at Williams-Sonoma. I was thinking about now saying the name, but I don't think anyone from Williams-Sonoma is here tonight. Okay, looks like one. Or you're being very silent because you are Williams-Sonoma. I was racially profiled at Williams-Sonoma, picked up a saucepan and waited in line. I was stopped by an employee and had the pot taken out of my hand and questioned. I did buy it, and I filed a complaint against them. That's how democracy works. That's what we're supposed to do. That could have went so many other ways. I'm in line with a saucepan, and someone was harassing me, and then it says turn to back. I'm like, oh, this is like committing to a murder. Okay. We got a couple more, but I'm going to save these because they're probably just as good. Okay, so you have a new course in front of you. I'm going to introduce your next storyteller. This next storyteller is an amazing cook that has just slogged through the world of blind cookery in Philadelphia and is a super badass. Please welcome Mir Podheiser.
How you guys doing? On any given night over the last 3 years, you could have found me in the kitchen at La Cherie preparing for dinner service. I probably had just scarfed down a little bit of staff meal, set up my station, and come back from a 5-minute break outside, ready to crush service. On one particular night, I came back from my break and I heard my chef Alex talking to Mark about an ex-flame. I'd heard stories about it before and they were always crude and disgusting. So I headed to my station, and I crouched my head to my lowboy in an effort to drown out Alex. Much to my surprise, I still had all my proteins there, so I came back up, just in time to hear Alex say, yeah man, she was like my own personal sex slave. She did whatever I wanted. She always wanted to stay over, but I had to kick her out before my wife got home. This was typical locker room talk, but it was okay because there were no women around. It was nice to be a part of the boys' club. 4 years before this was happening, I remember walking into my sister's house. It was a brisk morning, and that's when I decided that I didn't want to hide anymore, and that I didn't want to kill myself. It was 4 years ago today that I was sitting on my sister's couch with her dog Marley, and I finally said the words out loud that were locked away for so long. And Marley just comforted me, in the way that only a pet can. It was like she understood what I was saying, and ever so slightly nuzzled in closer to me. After saying the words out loud to Marley, I knew that I had to tell my mom. So we hopped in the car, we grabbed my mom, and we headed to the dog park, the same one that we used to take my dog to growing up. As we were walking through the woods, reminiscing on past walks with our dog, I stopped my mom and I told her that I had to tell her something. She knew that something was up, so she was looking at me kind of concerned, but mostly there was just love in her eyes. So I said, Mom, I was born in the wrong body. I was supposed to be a man. And she gave me the best response I could have asked for. I know. I was just waiting for you to be ready to tell me. It took me another 1.5 years to start my medical transition from female to male. I was a full-time student at a school with students whose opinions about my gender identity I didn't want to deal with. I was also working part-time at Three Bell Restaurant La Cherie as a prep cook. I wasn't super close to the staff, but my chef, Pierre Colmel, had promised me a full-time job upon graduation. I was so nervous about coming out, for fear of judgment, fear of rejection, or even worse, being fired for living as my authentic self. So after months of therapy, doctor's appointments, and blood tests, we finally set a date to start hormones. March 31st, 2016. 1 week after graduation and 1 week before starting full-time at the charade. When it came time to come out at work, I took the easy route. After telling the most important people in my life in person, I chose to post something on Facebook to reach the masses. One of those members of the masses was the owner of the restaurant, Charlotte. When I returned back to work, Charlotte pulled me aside and said, "Mir, I just want to tell you that Pierre and I support you 100%, and that if anyone here has an issue, that's their problem and not yours." And no one really had a problem. You know, people call me by my dead name or mess up my pronouns sometimes, but my family was doing that too. It was a learning experience for everyone. Most importantly, I felt comfortable and accepted by these strangers that would later become my family. With the support of my owners and coworkers behind me, it was time to get to work. If any of you have ever been a line cook, you know that every day that you go into work, you're just waiting to get your ass kicked. Being a first-time line cook at an esteemed restaurant, all while going through a second puberty, made me a pretty dreadful person to be around. I was irritable, I had acne for the first time in 7 years, I had an insatiable appetite, and I had the sex drive of a 16-year-old boy. Add that to the stresses of work, the long hours, the lack of breaks to feed my appetite, and a breakup, and I was pretty much the most horrible person to be around. But eventually, I found my stride. I was settling in at work. My prep lists were becoming more manageable, my voice dropped, I was fucking up a lot less during service, I started growing facial hair, my chef started giving me more challenging projects, and I set a date for top surgery. After top surgery, I was able to live as a trans male, but completely stealth. Any new hires had no idea of my past, and it was up to me who I wanted to tell. For the most part, I was happy to share that part of my life with my coworkers. But some took it upon themselves to out me to new hires. I remember walking into work one day, and my AM sous chef, instead of greeting me with, "Hey, good morning, how are you?" the first thing I hear out of his mouth is, "Hey Mir, Ivan doesn't believe me that you used to have boobs. Tell him that I used to have boobs." Like it was some big joke. So sure, I was happy to share that part of my life with my coworkers. But in that moment, I wanted to take Devin's face and slam it into the Metro rack. And also, testosterone made it really hard for me to harness my pent-up rage. But for whatever reason, when a moment like that would present itself, I would clam up. I wouldn't tell them that's a fucked up thing to say, that my life isn't their fun fact to share with a friend. Maybe it's because there's such a gray area in restaurants when it comes to sexual harassment and sexual innuendo. The line is so unclear that it's something that everyone has crossed at some point in their time in restaurants, myself included. Which brings us back to this kitchen, where Alex is talking about his ex being a sex slave. Would he say this if he knew that there was a woman present in the kitchen? No. Would he be telling me this story if he knew that I once lived and presented as female? Who knows? So what did I say to Alex when he just looked at me and laughed? He said, "Good for you, man, but that's gross." And he just kept on laughing and said, "Whatever." So I'm proud of who I am, and I'm proud of my identity. But I still fear all the time that I'm going to be treated differently by people in power because of how I choose to be. There's this whole machismo that goes on in kitchens, and being a man gives you so many more opportunities. So showing that you're anything less than one of the guys shows weakness. So what do I do now that I've come this far and I'm finally in the boys club? Unfortunately, I don't have the right answer, and hopefully it's something that I'll figure out over time. But the world isn't all sunshine and rainbows, and it's hard to believe that these comments are going to stop tomorrow. The most important thing is we need to be more conscious of the things that we say because we never know who's listening. Thank you.
And he makes great. Mir Podheiser.
So I've been working with these storytellers for probably a little over a month now, like really going back and forth with their stories. It's so amazing to hear people tell stories for the first time. Like you get like goons like me who like are given microphones when they shouldn't be all the time. We don't care what I have to say, but when you go to like stuff like first person arts, these story slams, who's been to a first person art story slam, by the way? Okay, that's a pretty good number. If you haven't been to a first person art story slam, please go. Basically, it's 10 storytellers. They're given 5 minutes each. The point is, a lot of those storytellers, like the best ones you hear, are the storytellers that have never been on stage before. Because you get a lot of repeat people who are coming all the time, and they practice this, and they like travel to do the storytelling thing. And then there's a halftime in all these shows, and you can like see someone kind of creep in from the back of the room and like put their name in the bag because something happened during the first half where they gained the courage to be like, yeah, I got a story to tell. And that person is oftentimes the best story you'll hear because they're like fresh and untainted. They just have something they were driven to do. I got to work with 5 of those this time. It has been absolutely incredible. I'm very proud of Mir for being part of that. So. And thank you all for being here. Thank you. The next portion coming up. I guess whoever filled out these slips, you are also first-time storytellers, possibly too. So let's read a couple more of these gems while your third course comes out. Okay, tell us about a time you had to overcome adversity. I have cerebral palsy. In 5th grade, they made us sing and they made us do something every day. When I started, I could barely make it to 15 minutes. By the end, okay. I think I got this now. Yes, okay, we're starting over. We got this. This is not the same as the speech thing. That was way worse handwriting. I have cerebral palsy. In 5th grade, they made us run a mile every day. Wow, seriously? What school did you go to? When I started, I could barely do it in 15 minutes. By the end of the year, I ran a 7-minute mile and won the award for the most outstanding runner. Wow. That's pretty good. Okay, so you have your third course. Let's save these little gems for later. So for your third course storyteller, another first timer, we have an amazing chef from Brazil. She's a Portuguese, she cooks Portuguese cheese bread in Philly. She has a company called Calzino. She's incredible. Please welcome to the stage, Laisa Donha. Keep it going, keep it going. Woo!
I see some familiar faces here. Good evening. I'm so happy to be here with you tonight. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. So, I would like to begin asking you guys a question. Can you guess the number of women in my family, going back 3 generations on my mother's side? Anyone? Close, close, close. Anyways, we are 20 women between my grandmother, aunts, and first cousins. There is a lot of women. What do you think? And they are all the reason I'm here today. I come from a generation of women who made hard seem easy. They were the fabric of my upbringing. And I only thank them for being here. Most summers at my grandmother's house, we still have family gatherings. Our gatherings were awesome. We do stuff as such. We had a lot of conversations that was essential to teach us things on life, as such as laughing, sharing stories, and recipes. The men would flock together in a room doing things such as playing cards and drinking. The only question they had was, is lunch ready yet? That's the only thing that they would say. I remember my grandmother one time, she started yelling at him and said, "Go cook your own meal if you can't wait." So he walked away from the kitchen, sent my father over to ask the same exact question. Wait, my mother then had a bowl of rice on her hands, and at the blink of an eye, she threw at his feet and said, "Time is a virtue. You wait. You know when food is ready." So it was the only thing to keep them away for a little while. Most Sundays at my grandmother's house, it was always fun because we all got together, the women. In her kitchen, it was the best where everything happened. My grandmother had in her kitchen had a wood stove and a machinery oven to bake stuff. The wood stove was heated up by the fire from the wood, and above the wood stove had some wire strips that they used to hang salted meats and preserve for later days. She had a few pots, pans, and utensils hung up on the wood wall next to the wood stove. And on the kitchen had a solid wood table that it was small, it couldn't fit a lot of chairs, but we all clumped together and ate good food. We used to make a lot of things together, artisanal things that require a lot of work, such as homemade breads and cheeses, soap to clean and wash clothes. And I learned a lot from them. But learning all that and seeing how they were treated, it really got me upset. So I didn't think it was right. The woman had to do everything, especially my mother. She had to work at home and outside the home and help us to raise us. And my father was not very cooperative. So it was tough seeing my mother suffering like that. One time she had enough and she separated from my father. So he was kind of a little lost after that. He was without direction and ground. He collapsed like an old lamppost. But she was able to finish raising myself and my two amazing younger sisters. I guess what I want to say is, even from the oppression from women to their husbands, woman can create something. Woman always can create something beautiful. and I learned that the bread that you guys just ate, it was all because of the woman in my family. And I thank them to give me the strength to helping me to be what I am today. 20 years later, since I come to the United States, I decided to take a chance and start my own business, make my grandmother's recipe of Brazilian cheese bread. I guess I'm not gonna cook because I'm expected anymore, or someone told me to. I'm gonna cook for the strong woman that helped to shape who I am. And for you too. I hope you all enjoy it. Thank you. All these amazing talent chefs here tonight and give us the opportunity to share our story. Thank you.
Oh, give it up for Laisa. Thank you. So Laisa makes these cheese breads that go back to her grandmother and probably before, and she has an amazing company. You can buy them pre-packaged. They sell them in stores. So check out Zeno after, because they're really, really delicious, and you don't eat too many of them so fast. So we have 2 more courses for you. Before we do that, I'm going to read one of these guys. So tell us about a time you had to overcome adversity. At boot camp, I had someone in my company threatening to kill me every night. That's not something you should have to deal with in boot camp. I feel like that's like an after thing. At boot camp, I had someone in my company who was threatening to kill me every night. I persevered, and he was kicked out of boot camp. Good. That's good. That's, again, democracy at work. Fantastic. Tell us about a time you had to overcome adversity. I had to keep my family farm going after my father had a serious stroke. I turned into a patient advocate and caregiver overnight. It was the most demanding 17 months until he passed away. Long story short, 11 years later, the farm now persevered and is experiencing a renaissance. Yay. 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 Okay, so we have 2 more courses for you. Just going to take a quick break, give you some chance to have your stomach settle. We'll have your next course out to you soon. bring you this amazing Filipino shrimp tofu lumpia made by our next storyteller. Please welcome to the stage Neal Santos. He just opened up a food joint called Lalo, which he can tell you all about afterwards if you'd like. But please welcome to the stage Neal Santos, first-time storyteller.
How's everyone feeling? Good. How's the food so far? Good? Yeah, good. Thanks for having me. My name is Neal Santos. I'm a food photographer. I'm married to a farmer, and I just opened a restaurant. A small little, tiny but mighty Filipino kitchen in Divorce. But that's not where the story is. The story starts with me as a little kid. I grew up in Jersey City, New Jersey, to two Filipino immigrant parents. My mom, my dad, and my older sister, who's 10 years older than me. My mom is a dietitian, and she basically worked 3 jobs. She never really rested. She worked. So that work ethic is kind of ingrained in my memory, and it's ingrained in my perception of Filipino culture. So I grew up very traditional Catholic Filipino, and I grew up luckily with a lot of other Filipino people in Jersey City. So there's a large community of Filipinos that live in that area, kind of integrated together during the 70s in the same time, and I'm pretty fortunate in that regard. So after school, when growing up, I would always have to go across the street to Ate Conching, who Ate is the name for someone who's older, generally a female figure that would take care of the household, the family. It's a name for someone who's an older sister, but generally a sign of respect for someone who is the caretaker, right? So I spent a lot of time with other boys, and I grew up with 5 other boys, right? And they're straight boys. I don't know if you know, but I'm telling my coming out story. And there are many coming out stories, right? Everybody has something that they're hiding. Everybody has a secret that they need to hide, or a lie that they might have to live out for a while. And, so I'm serving this lumpia, which as I was rolling, I was like, oh my God, these are like tiny little secrets that I'm going to feed people, right? So I think it's fitting that every time I would come home, my mom would be working 3 jobs, but she'd still find the time to make dinner, right? And that was like, for me, that was really special, and I probably took it for granted more than I really realize now. But again, I would come home and I'd be excited to just see my mom. She would either get me Burger King, or she would put the food on with ulam, and ulam is the main dish, right? So it's like something that sits for a really long time. It's really easy to prepare. You kind of just throw everything in one pot. So we had chicken adobo, we had sinigang, we had chicken tinola, and all of these dishes are really simple to make, whether you just chop it all up and put it in one pot. Lumpia, however, really sticks out in my head because it takes time. You have to sit, you have to roll, you have to chop every individual piece. So what you're eating, there's cabbage, there's sweet potatoes, there's carrots, there's ginger, there's garlic, and then the spicy vinegar sauce is really what kind of ties everything together. And my mom would make that, and it was my favorite because it slowed her down. She just works. So Sundays or Saturdays, that was our time together, right? So we spent time in the kitchen making lumpia. I always watched the Food Network growing up, so that always like come home, we put on Jada De Laurentiis or Emma Lagazzi, whoever kind of cheesy chef was on the TV at that time. And we would just talk, and she'd be rolling, and I'd help her, I would watch, and she'd always be cutting. And I had so much going on as a kid. When growing up with those kids, those 5 other boys, you think of 5 boys, and you think about growing up in the 90s, all every boy wanted to do was play wrestling or play Power Rangers. So there are 5 Power Rangers, and I grew up with 5 boys. and I always have to be the pink Power Ranger. So we reenact, let's be Power Rangers. You're gonna be the pink Power Ranger. I'm like, oh, come on, why do I have to be the pink Power Ranger? And it kind of bummed me out. But secretly, I knew that I really liked being the pink Power Ranger. The pink Power Ranger is badass, and she knew gymnastics, she knew how to kick, she knew how, like, her hair was really long, and at that point, the pink Power Ranger really kind of, I don't know, made me realize that I enjoyed different things. I was a little bit different than all the other boys, and that was okay in my mind. And at that point, I already knew, like, I kind of just established that. And I wanted to share that with my mom in a way that it was just a little kid kind of figuring out, like, hey, you know, I hung out with all the cousins and we had a lot of fun and we played Power Rangers and I was Pink Power Ranger. And she shut it down immediately. There was a moment of fear in my eyes, there was a moment of anger in her eyes, and she was chopping. And I remember just her asking, she's like, are you bakla? And bakla is the Tagalog word for a man that is presented in a feminine way. And it had negative connotation back then for me. And it still does for many people, for many Filipino people. And just the tone of her voice, and Filipino moms, and this is a stereotype, and I'm totally going to call out my mom as a stereotype, but she's a thrower. Whenever Filipino moms get really angry, they grab the closest thing, it's a spoon, it's their chinela, their slipper, they'll shake it at you really angry, and their eyes get really beady, and they go, my mom was a thrower, so whenever she got angry, she would throw. And I remember her grabbing a knife and kind of throwing it in the sink. Thankfully, it wasn't at me, and it was an expression of just this kind of grief that she felt. And at the time, that's when I learned what a closet was. And I just like shoved myself right back in there, and I lived that life for as long as I could. And growing up, it was really easy to kind of live there, live in that closet, live in those secrets, the lumpia. But it came to a point where I grew up, I went to college, I moved to Philadelphia, and Philadelphia really became this second life. It became a second home and another chance to grow up again. So I say that I grew up in Jersey City, but I really found myself in Philadelphia. I went to Temple and I studied photography, and again, slow processes really kind of helped me figure out what it is that I really liked with film, with developing. You're taking out roles, you're mixing, it's super chemical, and something just clicked. That it came to a point where I was seeing a boy that I really liked, and I didn't want to live a lie anymore. And I think that becomes a point where I stopped doing things for my mom and just really learned to start living for myself. So that senior year of college, I came home, and it was a blustery winter, almost Christmas, and she was and every time I come home, it's on a weekend, she was there. She was cutting, she was making lumpia again, and that lumpia slows her down. Except this time it was a little bit different. I learned my lesson. I said, you know what, Neal, you're gonna take that knife, you're gonna put it down away from her, and I held her down. So I held her arms down, and that was really important for me because it was just a look, and I knew I didn't have to say anything, and I knew that she knew that I knew that she knew. If that makes sense. But it was just with that one look, that one like slow, deep breath, that eye contact, and I knew she knew that I was going to tell her that I was gay. Saying the words is different than just seeing that look, but that whole moment really kind of, I felt that heavy weight just come up. And it really set the trajectory for the rest of my life from that point on. I never really thought that I would disappoint her, but she kind of had this idea that I would be a doctor. I'm a photographer and now a business owner. Sorry, she thought I'd be married to a Filipina, I married a very handsome white farmer. But despite all that, I knew that I wanted to make her proud, and that, to this day, is always my mission, is always my goal. Is always to pay respect to the ates, the titas, and the women who really kind of cared for me and shaped me who I am today. But for Mom, it was especially true. So I'm going to fast forward to where I'm at now with my mom. Like I said earlier, we opened a Filipino restaurant with a team. So I have a team of people that helped kind of put this concept together. We're in the Bourse in Old City, and it's called Lalo. And that is a play on Lolo, which is the masculine term for grandparent, and Lola, which is the feminine for grandparent, for grandmother. Except we put the feminine first, so it's Lalo. And I had the opportunity to kind of feed my entire family, and we do have lumpia on the menu. And it was a really hit-home moment. She ate the food, she really liked it, and at that moment, she was the one to kind of stop me and pause me from just running around, working, hustling. She held me down, she put my spoons down, held me right in front of the stall, held my arms down. She goes, "I'm very proud of you, but my lumpia is better." And I agree. It totally is way better. So thank you for listening.
Give it up for Neal Santos. Wow. Okay. We're down to our last course. We're read one more of these as these. They sort of remind me of my mom was never really a hitter. She was always like threatening of a hitter. Do you guys have those moms? Like the potential of being hit was always scarier than the actual being hit. Because like when your mom never hits you, and then she looks at you in the eye and she's like, then you know shit's about to go down. So my mom barely ever hit us. What my mom would do is she would tell my dad, who's like 6'5", to put us on top of stuff. Like whatever was around, whatever was the tallest thing that we definitely couldn't get down from. It was like this beautiful psychological warfare that I really hope I could pass down to my kids at some point. We never got down to those places. Yeah. I definitely want to get rid of all those like high drawers that are in my old family home. Like, I think that's a psychological effect from doing it. So we're serving your last course right now. I'm gonna read one of these. Tell us about a time you had to overcome adversity. I arrived at college and discovered everyone else was smarter. This obviously wasn't the same person who did not get into all the colleges. This person got into college and then they were not smarter. How'd you get in? I arrived at college and discovered everyone else was smarter. It took about a week to figure out I could outsmart them. And that's it. What did you do to outsmart them? I'm very curious. There should have been a back to that, definitely. All right, so I'm very happy to welcome our next and last storyteller, because this man actually used to be my boss. And he's not my boss anymore, so he technically can't fire me if I do anything wrong. But definitely had a lot of good times manning the helm at his restaurant, High Street on Hudson in New York, and enjoying his restaurants, High Street on Market, A Fork, and A Kitchen in Philadelphia, as well as Fork, kind of the flagship restaurant. And I'm really proud that he's here to tell his story tonight. So please give it up for Chef Eli Kulp.
Hey everybody. Some incredible stories tonight. Really amazing, really inspiring. I hadn't met all of them yet, so it's really fantastic to meet all of you guys. And, incredible journey a lot of people have been through. So, real quick before I get started, dessert tonight is roast pork and broccoli sandwiches. You may have heard of them. I moved down from New York in 2012 to start at at Fork, to take the chef position at Fork. I quickly was introduced to the sandwich culture in Philadelphia, in South Philly in particular. I have an affinity for sandwiches, and when I tasted the idea of a roast pork sandwich with either spinach or broccoli rabe, it was pretty mind-opening. So we opened up High Street on Market, which acts as a sandwich shop during the day. I had, prior to coming down to Philadelphia, I had experimented with fermentation, and one of my favorite things was fermented broccoli rabe. Treating it like kimchi or something like that you would see in Korean. So as soon as I tasted it, I had the aha moment, and light bulb went off. And I knew before we even started to think about High Street that somehow I was going to serve a sandwich with roast pork and fermented broccoli rabe. And it's been on the menu since. It's on the menu, our menu in New York as well, and it actually, New York Magazine in 2016, named it the best sandwich in New York. A little bit of Philly up in New York. So, anyways. So, yeah, Otis said, he worked for us for a chunk of time, probably almost a year or so, maybe more. A year? How long was it? How long did you work at the restaurant? Time flies when you're having fun. Otis, he's actually a really good server. He brings the same passion he does to his podcast to the floor. So I was happy to help Otis out because I think he did a fantastic job for us. So I'll return the favor. All right, so I'm going to start out with just talk a little bit about my journey and how I got to where I am today, like most of us here. Well, let's start mine in Seattle. I grew up in Washington State, and I had worked around both in Portland and Seattle. And at the time, I was 24 years old. I got this wild hair up my butt that I wanted to go to New York and cook. I didn't really know anybody in New York. I hadn't really had any real reason to go to New York, but I always had this idea that it would be the right move. So that's what we're going to start off with. So it was a really beautiful day in Seattle. Believe it or not, it doesn't always rain. It was June 2003. We had just finished stuffing in the last of my belongings in the back of my gray Isuzu Rodeo. And it wasn't even that full, that's the funny part. So, as my friends and roommates and family sort of gathered around, sort of wished me well, I was excited, cautiously nervous, I guess you could say, that I was making the right choice. I had nobody to tell me it was the right choice, but deep down I knew it was the right choice. So we got on the road, me and a friend of mine, and I looked down as we got on I-90, heading out of Seattle east to check my speed. And I remember I was driving across country without a speedometer that worked. But that was all right because at 70 miles an hour, the front wheels would start shaking. See, after many years of being in a restaurant, by that time it had been 10 years since I'd been cooking, since I was 14. I had seen a lot of chefs and other people. I've seen the industry get the best of people. A lot of well-intentioned people come in, excited about coming into the industry, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, but eventually things don't go the way they wanted to. See, I always had this vision in my head. It was me floating over a lake. Clouds were dark above me. It was a long, narrow lake. Hills on both sides, full of trees. The lake looked dark. And it wasn't just any lake, it was this, what I like to call the lake of mediocrity. And I don't know where I got this from. I must have read something one time. I don't really remember. But it was this idea that on the other side of that lake was success. And for me, somehow I had to get over there. Growing up, I lived in a town of about 500 people in Washington State, really rural. I started cooking when I was 14 years old. And when I left for New York, this was really me making that plunge. So I came out and immediately got to work in New York. I didn't really know what to expect. I knew that I was going to get my ass kicked, and that was really my only expectation. But in a lot of ways, that's why I did it. And just like I saw previously, again, I saw a lot of chefs who were cooking for the wrong reasons. A lot of kitchens where it was more about how hard can you make somebody else's life be. It was about potentially sabotaging the guy next to you. I think of a chef named Neal, very talented chef. I wanted to work for him. But I also remember him making people's lives miserable for no apparent reason other than to make himself feel better. An example of that would be to put a spoon over a hot flame and getting it extremely hot, and then going up to an unexpected cook and burning him on the arm with it. I think of this other very talented chef named Josh who couldn't lead a successful kitchen, and he couldn't even get to a successful kitchen service. Because as he would start his service with some cocaine every night, by about 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, it was getting pretty bad. So, fast forward a little bit to 2012, and I got the position as chef at Fork Restaurant. We just had a baby. He was 8 months old when we came down. It was good. Things were going really well. Within 3 years, we were working on our 4th restaurant up in New York. I was commuting back and forth between Philadelphia and New York as we were opening up the project. We had just signed the lease in March of 2015. It was May 12th, 2015, about 2.5, 3 months later, when I was in Philadelphia, but I had an early meeting in New York. So I left work earlier than normal, and I got on the 904 train up to New York. 10 minutes into the journey, the engineer drove 106 miles an hour to a 50-mile-an-hour curve, which sent everybody flying, killing 8, injuring countless others. Within just a matter of seconds, I knew that my life had changed in a way that I would never have thought. As I tried to push myself up under the rubble of the train, I realized I couldn't move anything. The next 6 months, 18 months, were a grueling, challenging part of my life. My marriage was in shambles. Depression and anger and angst and everything else that goes with it had set in fully. And since then, where I didn't think things were ever going to get better, they definitely have. They definitely have improved. I knew that I had to put on a good face for my son, especially. I also had 4 restaurants that had employees who needed direction. And knowing what I needed and knowing what they needed was enough to get me going. Many times, well, now I realize more than ever that often I needed them probably more than they needed me. So today, I still have that vision in my head of the lake of mediocrity. I'm sort of starting over. And hopefully, one day, I'll find myself on the other side. But relearning it is the biggest task at hand. So I've come a long way since acting at my Zuzu Rodeo in Seattle. But I look forward to continuing the journey out. Thank you.
Please give it up again for Eli Kulp. I will say, those 2.5 years working at High Street, that place is anything but mediocre. It was a pleasure to see that thing from the start to the finish, and everything he's done has come such a long way. It's insanely inspiring. Thank you all so much for coming and eating these 5 courses. I want to give it up one more time for all of our incredible storytellers. Not only do you have to get these stories ready, but you're cleaning all of your food too. I really want to thank First Person Arts for putting this all together for the Hungry Podcast. Thank you so much, JJ and Robin, for helping. The entire First Person Arts staff, the volunteers who have been serving you and helping you out, and everyone else that's been involved. Thank you very much for coming to the 2nd ever Hungry Podcast Live. This will be recorded and put on the podcast. You can find it on iTunes, on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you all very much for coming. I truly appreciate it. So please enjoy your food, relax. You can just hang out. Please talk to our storytellers and badger them more about their stories. I'm sure they're not completely exhausted about talking about themselves. Yeah, enjoy your food. Thank you so much.